Hey guys, Tim Hubel here with TACCOM. We are going to do a little law, Newton's law. We are going to dispel the myth that your PCC has to recoil like a 22 to be competitive. That is a lie. That comes straight from Satan. So let's go over this. What I did was I ran some numbers. And hopefully this isn't backwards, but here's Newton's second law. Force is equal to mass times acceleration. So what I did was I took one of our bolts, weighed it, saw how much the travel was, did the same thing with a 9mm bolt. Now there's a couple of things here that I took a liberty at. For time, I went with 0.06 seconds. And the reason why I did that was a really good split would be 0.12. So if you can do a split in 0.12, that means your gun fired, it went all the way back, hit the buffer tube, hit the back end, and went forward. That's the total travel, okay? So I did that for both. And a 22 bolt is traveling about 0.818 inches. Average 9mm bolt is traveling at about 2.3 inches one way. And that's why I took the 0.06, half of the split. Okay, so you've got a 5.6 ounce bolt that travels 0.818 in 0.6 seconds, and you have versus a 20 ounce average 9mm bolt and buffer traveling 2.3 inches if you didn't short stroke it in 0.06 seconds. What it comes out is the force of a 9mm bolt is 4.5 times the force of a 22 bolt. So if you've got that much force on that much, with that mass, how can you make the 9mm feel like a 22? Well, there's only one thing you can do: slow the bolt down. Well, if you slow the bolt down, now you don't have a fast action. So it's always a balancing act. So can you make your 9mm feel like a 22? Yeah, it's a pretty complicated question, and that should never be your focus on building a 9mm PCC. Your focus should be, let's see if I can find it here. I've got notes. What makes a PCC competitive? A 5-ish pound rifle. Minimal muzzle rise. You don't want that muzzle to rise up. You want a fast action. In other words, you want that bolt to eject the shell, put another shell in as fast as humanly possible. And you want manageable recoil. Wow, that's an opinion. Manageable recoil is an opinion. Weight of the gun, that's solid. You weigh it. That's how much your gun weighs. Muzzle rise, well, you can measure that too. You take a video of yourself and you focus in on the barrel and you see how much that muzzle actually rises. And then you want a fast action. You want that to, while fast action is an opinion, you want it to open and close faster than you can pull the trigger again. That's what you want. So if you're going to have your gun feel like a 22, well, if you're doing 0.16 splits, yeah, you might be able to get there by, changing springs and locking mechanism or what, but that's what you want. You want in order a manageable weight rifle, minimal muzzle rise, a fast action, and manageable recoil. Manageable recoil in a 9mm, it is going to be more recoil than a 22. Can't get around that. So, can you reduce the force of your 9mm bolt? Absolutely. Let's just say you have, I've added 5 things here. How can you reduce the bolt force? One, you can reduce your power load, your power factor, but that will slow your bolt down. If you slow the bolt down, you might have to add more spring. You might have to take some weight away. But once you find that load, work with that load. Now you develop your system around that load. More weight in your bolt? Nah, it'll slow your bolt down some, but it'll probably increase the force back and forth. Less weight? Yeah, it'll speed your bolt up some, and it may increase or decrease your force. It could go one way or the other depending on your spring. Now, you could go more spring, and that's going to slow your bolt some and may decrease the force, but it's going to make that bolt slam home fast. Another thing you can do is add a second stage. If you're running a carbine buffer and a carbine spring, you can add a second stage to it. You can do this. What this does, and I'll show you a graph in a minute, what this will do is this slows down your bolt at the end of the stroke. You want that, let's say your bolt is traveling 2.3 inches. Well, at 1.25 inches, your bolt has ejected the round, cocked the hammer, and is able to pick up the next round in the magazine. That's why these guys talk about short stroke. If you check your stroke on your 9mm, if it's standard, it's going to be 2.3 inches or more. Well, ideally, you could shorten the stroke to about 1.25 inches and not have bolt hold open. So, but you'll cock the rifle, you'll feed around, and you'll eject around. So you can do that. But after that 1.1 inches, now you want to slow that, or after that 1.25 inches, now you want to slow that bolt down. Here's a graph I made out. Okay, if you look at this line here up on top, that's your standard bolt and buffer, okay? You know, it goes from bolt closed to the end, to hitting the buffer tube, okay? Your force doesn't go down much, it's fairly constant, and you know, that's how it's gonna work. So to reduce that, you want your bolt and buffer not to hit the back of the buffer tube. You want it to be as close to zero when it gets to this point as possible. So what you do is you buy a bolt and buffer with a second stage, or a buffer system. Well, what that's gonna do is after that 1.5 inches, now you're gonna start super slowing that bolt down. Now what you don't see in a curve like this is you're hitting a wall, okay? Because of the parabolic curve, it's not a solid wall, but you're slowing the bolt down aggressively more towards the end. And while this reduces your felt recoil, it can be better. What we've done is we've taken a two-stage system, we've added our cushion to it, and now what we've done is we've taken this curve. It starts out great, but after about 1.1 inches, now it's gradually slows it down to that point. It hasn't hit a wall. In other words, you know, you're not slamming on the brakes, you're applying the brakes gradually. That's the key to get a gun to have less felt recoil. That's what you want to do. So how do you do that? Hey, Tim, I'm sorry, I already bought the Blitzkrieg heavy duty buffer. Great, I've got one. It worked fine. I don't think they're as good as this, but I'm an old man and I like mechanical things. So if you bought that Blitzkrieg heavy duty buffer and you got that 3/4 inch spacer in there, lose it. Put this in. You're gonna go from hitting a wall to a gradual, fast recoil reduction. This is the science, guys. Follow the science. You can do that with the Blitzkrieg. Obviously, if you've got this system already, you can put this system in. See what I've just done by putting both of these in. I've made this so that you get more reduction over a greater distance. I shouldn't say more, but the same. But you get it's a constant reduction. Whereas if you just have a second stage, it hits and now it parabolics down. So these are always. This is key. We found this out. This will work unless you have a cartridge system. This should work with just about any buffer system out there. It won't work with the JP silent captured spring system. Won't work with the Arms Tech. Any of those that are an assembled unit. But if you have a bolt, a buffer, throw this in. Worst case scenario, you've short stroked your system by 3/4 inch. That's how when this collapses on here, this is 3/4 inch. If it doesn't work, well, then get yourself an A5 buffer tube. An A5 buffer tube is 3/4 inch longer, and then it'll accommodate this. But I don't care what system you have. If you don't have your second stage enhanced, you're probably hitting a wall, and while you've reduced your felt recoil, you can do it better. Why, you can even do that with a JP5. You got these guys shooting JP5. They've got the JP silent captured spring system in it, and at the end of the day, it's a buffer and a spring. You got to get that buffer and spring just right, so that when the bolt and all comes back, I don't care what locking piece you have on there, you're running the risk of slamming into the back of the gun. Muzzle's gonna rise. Anytime that bolt and buffer slams into the back of the gun, muzzle rise. You want to eliminate this. That helps eliminate it. Smoothing out that second stage helps eliminate muzzle rise. But you don't want to hit the back of the gun. In a JP5, yep, you can do it with ease. You got guys, what they do is they say, hey, put in the 70 degree lock piece in. Yeah, if you want to slow your system down. Yeah, but, and live on the edge. I recommend putting an 80 in, dumping the silent captured spring system, go with our JP5 enhanced buffer system. It's not going to feel like a 22 rimfire, but it's going to be fast, and you're going to reduce your muzzle rise because we've reduced the mass of the bolt buffer, and we have a second stage at the end of the stroke. And we've got customers that are using this system for the JP5, and they're like, yeah, I didn't buy into that lie, Tim. I know I have to have a fast action and manageable recoil. Shoot one of our guns that has our recoil system on it. You're gonna find I'm not pounding sand up anybody's butt. I'm speaking the truth, and this comes from a lot of experience and a lot of testing in the field. You guys have a great day. It's a crappy day here in Minnesota. I am in the shop because of it. I'd love to be fishing, but not today. Have a great time. Bye now.